Today is the 21st day of Teves, the 21st of January, and we're in Daf Semichah Amud Aleph, in Derech Mitzvosecha Mitzvahs Kiddush HaChodesh, which means sanctifying the new moon. Okay, so we saw some connections back to the sciatic nerve, to Netzach, so let's advance a little bit more. So we said that sanctifying the new moon is not like, which is a mitzvah that was the first mitzvah that was given by Hashem to Moshe and Aaron. So it's not like other mitzvahs, because this is a mitzvah that's for the people that are the Sanhedrin, the judges, the leaders of the generation. We read this, and we wanted to read a little bit about Semichah. So what is this thing of ordination? We have this page. So we started reading it yesterday on the Rambam's Yortzeit. Our teacher Moses ordained Joshua by placing his hands upon him, as it states, looking at the second paragraph. And this is from Rambam Hilchot Sanhedrin, chapter 4. And he placed his hands upon him and commanded him. Similarly, Moses ordained the 70 judges, and the divine presence rested upon them. Those elders ordained others, and the others still others in later generations. And this tradition continued until the Talmudic era, when the sages had received ordination from one from the other, in a chain extending back to the court of Joshua and to the court of Moses. A person who is ordained by the Nasi, meaning the greatest wise man of the generation, the leader. It's like a king. And one ordained by another ordained judge have the same status, even if that ordained judge never served in a Sanhedrin. The moment someone's ordained, they're going to ordain someone else, and it doesn't matter what position they ever held. It's all the same. How is the practice of Semichah practiced for all time? How was this done for perpetuity? The person conveying ordination does not rest his hands on the elder's head the way that Moses did for the elders and for Joshua. Instead, he is addressed by the title of rabbi and is told, "You are ordained and you have the authority to render judgment even in cases involving financial penalties." And that's the big deal, really. The idea of a penalty. What's a penalty? A penalty is something that's up to the judge. He determines how much it is. So that can only be done by someone who is ordained. Now, the Torah tells us what most of the penalties are. So it's not exactly that the judge can decide what the amount is. But there are certain penalties where it is up to the judge to calculate how much the penalty would be. For instance, in bullshit, which is the big deal, embarrassment, that if someone hurts someone else, so they also have to pay for embarrassment. And embarrassment is something that's very hard to quantify. So, in any case, many things in the Torah are penalties. So only an ordained judge can administer the verdict of a penalty. So that's why he says, even in cases involving financial penalties. All the more so that you can't judge in a capital crime case if you're not ordained. So we don't do that today. We have no authority over that. The Semichah, which ordains elders as judges, may be conveyed only by 3 individuals. It has to be done by 3 people. One of the 3 must have received Semichah from others, as explained. But only one of them has to be a Samuch himself.
It has to be like a Beis Din situation?
A Beis Din, but at least only one of them has to have Semichah. The term Elokim can be applied only to a court which received Semichah in Eretz Yisrael alone, only in the land of Israel. They are wise men who are fit to render judgment, who are scrutinized by a court within Eretz Yisrael, which appointed them and conveyed Semichah upon them. At first, whoever had received Semichah would convey Semichah on the students. Afterward, as an expression of honor to Hillel, the elder, the sages ordained that Semichah would not be conveyed upon anyone unless license had been granted by the Nasi. So at some point, when Hillel was the Nasi, they added this stipulation that they had to receive permission from the Nasi to ordain someone. They also ordained that the Nasi should not convey Semichah unless he is accompanied by the Av Beit Din, and that the Av Beit Din should not convey Semichah unless he was accompanied by the Nasi, so they had to work together, the Av Beit Din and the Nasi. The other elders could convey Semichah for themselves after receiving license from the Nasi, provided were accompanied by 2 others, for Semichah cannot be conveyed by less than 3 judges. Semichah may not be conveyed upon elders in the diaspora, outside the land of Israel. Even if the judges conveying Semichah received Semichah in Eretz Yisrael, you can't do it in Chutz Haaretz. Even if the judges conveying Semichah were in Eretz Yisrael and the elders to receive Semichah were in the diaspora. they should not convey smicha to someone who is outside the land of Israel. Needless to say, this applies if the judges conveying smicha were in the diaspora and the elders to receive smicha were in Eretz Yisrael, the more so if it's the opposite. If both of them were in Eretz Yisrael, both the person conveying and the person receiving, smicha may be conveyed even though the recipients are not in the same place as those conveying smicha. It doesn't have to be, it's a non-local phenomenon. You can give it to someone who's in a different city in the land of Israel. Instead, the judges conveying smicha sent to the elder or write to him that he has been given smicha and that he has permission to adjudicate cases involving financial penalties. This is acceptable because both of them are located in Eretz Yisrael. The entire area of Eretz Yisrael, which the Jews who left Egypt took possession of, is fit to have smicha conveyed within it. Judges who themselves were granted smicha may convey smicha on many individuals, even 100 at one time. King David once conveyed smicha on 30,000 individuals in one day. Vayosef David, עוד 30,000 בחור על ישראל. That's the pasuk in, I think it's Samuel, 2 Samuel, beginning of chapter 6. He says, in one day he gave to 30,000 people smicha to become ordained. Okay, so we saw a little bit about smicha just to get the idea. והסמיכות ידוע שהוא איש מפי איש עד משה רבנו עליו השלום. So we know the ordination goes all the way back to Moses. וזה שהיותנו היום מונים במלאכת העיבור שבידינו, ואומרים שזה היום ראש חודש, שזה היום יום טוב. Now we, sanctifying the new moon is really called Sod HaYibur. It's called the secret of the intercalation. That's the English word for it, which means to add days. Intercalation means to, in the calendar, to add. So what do we really add? We add either a day for the month, instead of 29 days having 30 days. Or there's another type of intercalation we do, and that's the more common one, which is to decide to add a month to the year. A lunar month, of course, in order to equalize the lunar and our calendar, which is based on lunar months, with the rest of the calendar, which is based on solar time. Solar year. So now that we have this calendar, the fact that we say today is Rosh Chodesh, or today, like we said, is the 21st day of Tevis, and today is a Yom Tov, and 24th of Tevis, on Thursday it'll be Yom Tov, it'll be the Yortzeit of the Alter Rebbe. How do we know that those are the days? Lo mivnei cheshbonenu nikveinu Yom Tov b'shum panim. This is not because we calculated it. We can't. This was taken away from us. It's like we don't have a brain. As we'll see, it's a very important part of the process is to calculate. So we don't calculate. B'shum panim, under any circumstances. מפני שכך קיבלנו שרבי הלל הנשיא, שהיה גדול בדורו ונשמח בארץ, הוא קידש חודשים ועיבר שנים העתידים לבוא, עד שיבוא אליהו, ועל אנו סומכים היום. So we had this great scholar in the 6th generation of the Talmud. His name was Hillel Nasiya. He's not the same as Hillel the Elder. He was in time of the temple still. About 500 years later, there was a great scholar. His name was Hillel the Nasi. And he already, seeing that there were no more smuchim and they couldn't hold on to the tradition in Eretz Yisrael of having ordained people. So he, in one batch, sanctified all the months from his time until, as it were, the end of time. Until when? We don't know exactly until when, but he did it for many, many hundreds of years. And so we use his calendar, and he already calculated forward the calendar. As we know, the calendar is off a little, and it keeps getting off because that's exactly why you have to calculate. That's exactly why you need to have an eyewitness account of the new moon, because it's a three-body problem, and as much as you want to calculate it ahead of time, there's a limit to how exact it can be. And we're already off a little bit. We're off by a few days, as it were. Not off by the calendar itself, but by the fact that Pesach is later and later. It's really going deeper and deeper into the spring. It's after the spring equinox. It's supposed to be right by it, and it's getting later. How late? So the Rambam writes in his.
You mean that was happening by the time of the Rambam?
Already, by the time around there was something, but it wasn't so big. Now it's bigger. It's not like you don't notice it. It's not like you sit in Pesach and you say, "Oh, I'm sweating." That's not the case at all. But it's further.
A few minutes a year.
It's a few minutes. I think every decade. So it's slowly inching forward. So the Rambam said by the year 6. He said something like by the year 6,000. I don't remember. He mentions a year. I think He says by that time it'll be completely off, and Pesach will not be in the spring like it needs to be. But he says we're not worried about that. Why are we not worried about that? Because Mashiach will come already by then, and we'll restore the Kiddush HaChodesh by eyewitness account. The moment it's by eyewitness account, it doesn't go off because it's exactly the point that it's going by the moon. So he says that here. He says the Tzemach Tzedek that Hillel the Nasi, this scholar from the 6th century, he already sanctified all the new months and determined the calendar for something like 1,500 years in advance. So that's what we use. But it's not that we today sanctify the moon because we don't have ordination. Okay, so it's a little bit.
They want to reenact.
Right.
100 years ago.
Right. So this is a very interesting story. In the time of the Beis Yosef, the Ma'ari Beirav, who was one of his contemporaries, they wanted to restart the ordination because the Rambam says something very interesting. He says that if all the sages of Eretz Yisrael, all the rabbis of Eretz Yisrael come together, it has to be in Eretz Yisrael, of course, like we saw. So they could give smicha to one person, and then he could give to whoever he wanted. It doesn't mention here; it's a little later. It's not in chapter 4, but it didn't work because there was a person, Mari Beirav, who was against it, opposed it, and he stopped it. They tried in Sfat, but the sages of Yerushalayim were against it. נתת לי אתמול, וזה היום גם כן בשביל...